Okay, one of the questions would you please review the positive traits of S's? And one of the things that my response to that was, and this is really true, that with S's you could list 25 positive traits and 5 negative traits, and when they walked out the door, they would have a tendency to only remember the negatives. And that is an S tendency. And it's something you've got to be very aware of when you're dealing with the S's. Remember I said the S's tend to lack their sense of value of what they're contributing to the whole, to the team. And it's because S's would view, they're subjective, but they view the environment around them as more powerful than they are. And, I's are subjective, but I's are influencers. And so with an I who is subjective, but because they tend to think they can influence the world around them, then an I, you could give them 25 negative things and 5 positive. And all they would remember would be the 5 positives. So, you start realizing, as you understand your pattern, as you understand your tendencies, and you start understanding not only how you communicate, but how you tend to think, then in your self-talk, you can always remind yourself, something, this is nothing but my point of view. This is how I tend to view this. Here are other strengths. And you remind yourself of the positive things, about your behavior style, the positive things that a person said to you. For example, you could sit down with an S in a relationship, and you could sit down and say, I really, really love you. I want more than anything in the whole wide world for this to work out. I'm willing to do anything. I'll get counseling. I'll do whatever you need to do. But I also want you to understand that I can't continue to live with you like this. Now, what that is going to leave with is, you said you couldn't continue to live with me like this. They're not going to go back and recap and say, no, this person also said that they loved me. They said all these great things about me. They said they'd do anything to work this out. And so that S, and that subjective, the world around me is more powerful than I am, tendency is going to go to, so what you're saying is you want a divorce. Well, that's not what the person said. Yes. Well, I will, but you gotta grasp it's not going to do you any good to hear the recap the positive things if in fact you don't determine that as an S, I am going to have this tendency to do this, and if I don't recognize this and develop a strategy. Remember we talked about the I's? None of the I's wanted me to recap the positives. They don't even remember what I said they were struggling with. You know what I mean? But S's are loyal. S's are stable. S's are great at calming excited people. S's can be good counselors if they have good training. If they don't have good training, they tend to be just dumping grounds. They'll let people dump on them too much, S's, they are good listeners. S's bring sincerity to a situation, the sincere element to a situation. S's can become specialists because they don't mind focusing in on a task and learning it very well and learning how to excel at it. S's, with the right training, can be really good facilitators. So every behavioral style has incredible strengths that they can bring to the table. But see, the key is know yourself. Be willing to own the positives and the negatives of your behavior style. And now see, this is where the gospel of peace comes to play. If you are not firmly rooted in the gospel of peace, you cannot own your stuff. Because that is like just heaping another burden on your back that you can't bear. But if you know that God loves you and accepts you, and it's all right to be where you are, and it's all right to say, oh, this is what I'm facing, this is what my issues are, these are what my tendencies are. You know, if you can do that, then the truth is it's really easy to own your stuff, develop strategies around how to work with your behavior, and develop a plan to go where you want to go. And then, really, to me, the behavioral profiles gives you the first real practical working tool for applying grace to your life. You know, grace is God's capacity, God's ability, God's power that works from your heart and makes you able to do what you can't do in your own strength. So you recognize, now, these are my behavior tendencies, but if I am who God says I am, then if I choose to, and you realize it's all about choices, if I choose to, I can bring these other tendencies forward when I want to. And God can give me the strength and the capacity to walk in these when I want to and when I need to and when I'm willing to. So to me, the behavioral profile, man, ties in incredibly in interweaving grace and peace into your life in a very practical way. So let's talk about the keys to relating to C behavior. When communicating with C's, provide them with clear facts and details. C's don't really care how you feel. You know, if you're dealing with a C and you're in a critical situation, you know, you might make the statement, well, I think so-and-so. That C would say, you know, I don't really care what you think. Is that what it says? Now, that a C, to get that direct, it had to be a very critical situation. But many times when that C is not saying that, that is what they're thinking. You know, I don't want to know what you think. I want to know what the facts are. I don't want to know what you feel. I want to know what the facts are. So, you know, you can be trying to work out a situation, say, like I say, between an I and a C, and the I is talking feelings, the C is wanting facts. And the harder you try to persuade them, the less they believe that you're genuine, because you're going farther and farther away from what it is that they need to feel safe and to feel comfortable. A D and a C can get incredible conflict because the D is a generalizer, and so the C is going to think that the D is a liar, because the D will make generalizations. That D will tend to think that C is just a critical nitpicker because they want all these details. So, you know, when you are communicating with a C, give them the facts and the details. When you are a C communicating with other people, you've got to realize other people don't want all the facts and the details. When I'm facilitating situations where C's are trying to communicate to other behavior styles, whether it's a marriage counseling situation or a business situation, almost always at some point I have to step in, and in a way that's not insulting, I have to say, you've really given them enough information. This is what they're asking for now. And C's may be the most resistant to giving the other person the kind of communication that they want. Because C's are right. And right is what's important, you know. And if this is right, I'm not going to do wrong, you know. When I do personal coaching and consulting with C's in the sales business, one of my son-in-laws is an IC. And he went into a business for himself, and I really encourage, you know, my family members, if they've got a skill and if they're willing to learn some things, be self-employed, you know. Now, not everybody is ready to be self-employed. And let me tell you something. If you haven't developed diligence working for somebody else, you're probably not ready to be self-employed, because you'll starve to death through your lack of diligence. Use working for other people as the opportunity to build the skills and traits that will prepare you for self-employment. I's want to be self-employed, but boy, they get in trouble because they don't develop really good self-management styles, and they get in trouble if they're not accountable. So develop your skills working for somebody else, and then take yourself into a more entrepreneurial direction where you can set your own goals. But anyhow, this one son-in-law of mine, he really had trouble really getting his business to work. But he was an IC. And so as an I, he's inspired, he's enthusiastic, but as a C, he's enthusiastic about the details. And I would watch him when he was talking to people, and it was almost like when somebody would ask a question, it's like, no, you don't need the answer to this. Here's the answer you need. Now, those words may have never been said, but that's what was communicated. And so I sat down with him. I said, when you're doing business with somebody, what's important is what's important to that person. Doesn't matter what you're going to do when you do this repair job for them and you fix this and that. They don't really care, unless they ask. They probably don't really care. And so I said, the thing is you're not listening to the types of questions that people are asking. You're overloading them with information that they don't want, and you're losing business. And so whenever he flipped and started listening for what people were really asking for, he started providing much less information in his negotiations, and started getting more deals. And so now he pretty much has all the business he can do. But the turnaround was he stopped trying to provide all this information. People didn't want it. So if you're communicating with a C, you've got to give them a lot of facts and details. But if you're a C communicating with other people, you've got to realize nobody wants as many facts as you're going to give. Now, C's have a great value for accuracy. Man, they want stuff to be accurate and precise. So they have value for accurate information or precise information, I may have told you this story. I had a secretary / bookkeeper working for me one time, and I think I told you this story. She was the one that gave me the note and said I was probably the most dishonest person that she'd ever met. And I'm like, what? What are you? So I thought, well, maybe I got a problem I don't realize here. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. So I got with her and talked with her, and it was she had this list. Of course, C's, when they sit down with you, they're going to sit down with you with a list. S's will tend to do lists too, because they know that they'll get intimidated when they sit down with you, and they'll forget things. So they'll make S's, and so S's and C's tend to make lists. So, and it was stuff like, you said that we needed, $50,000 to do this project. Good and well it's only going to cost us $48,500. You said 5,000 people made a commitment in this crusade, and we really know that the numbers say that it was 4,912. And she just had this whole list of these minute discrepancies where I generalized, but I didn't generalize by much. I mean, what I mean is like just rounding off to the next number. C's don't round off to the next number, because that's inaccurate information. That's being irresponsible. That's being dishonest. And so they have this tendency to overuse this trait and really become very critical. C's are probably the most self-critical of all the behavior styles, because C's were somehow influenced, to believe that being right was the condition or the prerequisite for being loved or for people having value for you or that sort of thing. So C's connect their ability to do the task to their personal acceptance. Now, with a D, it's always safe to attack the task. Because they'll say, show me a better way. But don't attack them. Don't show them a better way in a way that would make them lose respect or make people lose respect for them. But with a C, if you attack the task, that's just like cussing them out in public. Because their sense of value is related to how well they do a task. So you see, you could be thinking that you're really being nice by not attacking them personally or making this a personal issue, and you're really trying hard, man, to make this to where I'm not going to attack you, and they're getting madder and madder, and you're thinking, oh, what? And what it is you're questioning how well they do the task. And that is where they get their sense of value from, is being right, doing the task right, doing it properly. And so this, like I say, this anger is escalating, and you don't have a clue why this anger is escalating. So, with a C, if you really want to be good with a C, you're never telling a C that they're doing it wrong. You're just telling them how they can be more right. Does that make sense? In other words, you wouldn't sit down with a C and say, you know what, if you would learn how to add, you could get these numbers right. You could sit down with a C and say, man, I'm telling you, your commitment, this detail is incredible. And you know what? Probably, I really need your expertise on focus on these details, so let me get you a calculator, because that way you could deal with so much more information. And so you never told them they couldn't add. You just told them a way they could be more right and more precise without taking away from them being right in the way that they've done the previous thing. Now, D's and C's tend to explain things to death. D's and C's. We've never been there, have we, Sarah? I'll tell you, when I was young, and I'm probably too far the other way now, but when I was young, I would explain something to death. Just keep going back and saying, but let me tell you why. Let me explain it. Because you were afraid you're going to lose the person's respect. Well, for a C, though, they're just afraid that the person's going to think that you're wrong. And if they do, that's bound to be the end of everything. If they think you're wrong, the world as you know it will cease to exist. And so C's just they keep on explaining. And what they don't understand is that is antagonistic. That is producing a sense of antagonism and aggression to the other people. And really making it where the other people do not desire to work with you because you're doing the same thing that a D does. You're just not doing it with the intensity. But this constant barrage just gets to be more than anybody wants to deal with. The Bible says that you yea be yea and you nay be nay. We have got to learn to be comfortable with yes, no, okay in the appropriate setting. I'm not saying that stuff shouldn't be explained, but see, again, remember, nothing has power over you beyond the significance you attach to it. So, see, the C is saying, if you think I'm wrong, this is bound to mean that you see me this way. This is, you know what I mean? And and the D does that too, with respect. So, if you're a C, you got to realize, if I do this, I will create an antagonistic environment. If you're dealing with a C that's doing that, you've got to graciously let them explain a little, reaffirm your value for them, and then end it. Because really, a C will just keep on and on and on until you just almost just have to be rude to just get the explanation to stop. Yes? Oh, yeah. Yeah. But sometimes they just got to go work it out. You know what I mean? See, here, we're always working this balance between I want to show you value, but I also don't want to be an enabler. I want to make sure you feel safe, but I don't want to be absurd. You know what I mean? And so you know, with every behavior style, you let them within reason do what they do, say what they need to say. But at the same time, there's got to be a point where if you're managing this person, where it's just like, you know something, this is over as far as I'm concerned. If you still got issues with this, you just got to work this out. This is you. And, you know, one of the issues that I face is, you know, when you have dealt with multi-million-dollar deals, when you have had, and when you've done a lot of business, you know, everything, you've experienced about everything. You know what I mean? You've experienced every kind of conflict with people you've experienced. You've had stuff that works. You've had stuff that don't work. And it's just like, not much is personal. For me, there are very, very few things that are personal. You know, it's just like, okay. And so you get used to living at this certain communication style. For example, now, you guys may take this wrong. I don't really, on a personal level, I like dealing with first-year students. I don't like dealing with first-year students on anything much beyond just friendly. Because first-year students are not ready for the level of professionalism where something goes how it goes, and you deal with it and move on. And I mean, really, first-year students come in and it's just like, oh, let me explain, let me do this. It's like, you know, really, at a certain level of professionalism, it's not necessary, it's not desirable, it's not needed, it's counterproductive, and let's just get on. Let's go. And you'll find that as you get in different levels of professionalism, you'll find that there is less and less room for those kinds of things. Now, that doesn't mean those people don't care about you or it's not personal. I mean, or they don't care about your own personal level or that sort of thing. But you just start realizing that the more professional experience a person becomes, the less personal anything is. Business is business. It works. It don't work. It goes good. It goes bad. But it was still business. It has nothing to do with the person, and you move on. But one of the reasons many people can never move into levels of professionalism where they can really live their dreams and really succeed and you know, have experience unlimited wealth and resources is because we are so insecure and so working through the concept of everything being about us. No matter if we're a C, a I, a D, or S, it doesn't really matter. You know, we've just got these ways that everything seems to be about us, and we spend so much time trying to sort through all of that stuff that really we can't move on and live our dreams and you know, and be professional. You know, if I have a conflict with a person, we say what we got to say, and honestly, when I walk away, it's over. And if it ain't over, I come back and tell you it's not over. But you see, if a person is struggling and passing judgments and their self-worth is all tied up in it, then, man, that they can't function on that level of professionalism. So you've got to figure out, how do I do this? How do I bring this stuff in? And how do I use this on a professional level? And how do I use this on a personal level? And I think we'll have one class where we get to talk about it more on a professional, on kind of sort out the professional level versus the personal. C's tend to not be socialites. It's not saying that they're unkind or not nice people, but they tend to not be socialites. Because, you know, I'm not really a good natural socializer. I don't really know. I was talking with somebody the other day, and they were telling me about doing something with their kids and all this kind of stuff. I said, you know, that is really cool. I said, you know, I was just so not a good parent in that area because I just didn't know how to do those things, you know. And there's social areas, and I don't know how much that has to do with the way I was raised, what my background is, what my life experience is, what my behavior pattern is, but it's just a combination of all those things. So, I think D's and C's tend to not be good socializers. S's and I's tend to be good socializers. And when I put something social together, I try to structure it so that I have enough S's and I's there that the social mix works. Because if you get if you get a bunch of D's in a room, or a D might have a tendency to just want to talk about their accomplishments and about them, An I might have a tendency to talk and not listen, and a C would just have a tendency not to talk unless you ask them a technical question or something that called for a factual answer. And so as C's, you want to realize. Let me. One of the things I always use, and you'll learn this in one of the ministry classes, is the acronym FORM. And what I've discovered is if you let other people do all the talking, they think you're the most interesting person they've ever met. And so you ask people questions in a way that doesn't make them feel like you're just probing them. The acronym FORM is a good one to remember. The F stands for family. Ask people about their family. You're married, you got kids, where you from, da-da. Occupation, the O's for occupation. What do you do for a living? How long have you been doing that? Da-da-da-da-da. Well, recreation is a good one. I mean, recreation is, because once you know what people do for fun, you got that person figured out. That when you figure out what people do for fun, you have found like the secret back door to how to connect with that person. Because people always want to go back to whatever they consider fun. Always. And then M, if you're in a ministry situation, M would stand for ministry. If you're in a business situation, M would stand for money. People want to talk about money and making money and how to succeed and that kind of stuff. So you can ask people, questions, but now you have to do it in a very user-friendly way. And they're answering questions, and really they're talking a lot. They're feeling comfortable. You're showing an interest in them, and you're going to connect with them on a very personal level. Now, C's are also not comfortable showing emotions. Now, this is important. This is important if you were planning a surprise party for a C. And you're wanting them to have this big emotional response. It ain't going to happen. They're going to express appreciation, but the real truth is they're not going to be comfortable expressing any real extreme emotion of any kind publicly, whether even personally, whether it be positive emotion or negative emotion. Yes. S's project. I like to think that S's project lower levels of I emotion. S's like people, so an S will express appreciation. They will S's. If you're in a group like this and there's an I is talking about appreciation, man, they're just talking to everybody in the room. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of. But if an S was doing that, they might be in a room with 20 people, and they would probably pull the person over to the side. And while that I was up there talking, they'd say, "Listen, I just want to take a few minutes just to let you know how much I really appreciate you." And so S's express emotion, but they do it in more of a conservative way and in a smaller circle. You know what I mean? And S's will express warmth. They will express appreciation. And S's may very commonly, in expressing emotions, kind of go to I just don't know what to say. You know what I mean? Because they're not real. S's don't like to be real verbal, but they are expressing emotion. It's just on a more intimate scale. So, with a C, if I was going to do something with a C that I wanted it to be, like you would not propose to a C on the Today Show. I was getting ready the other morning, and I had the Today Show on, and Al, the weather guy, he comes over. How they got those people that are standing all around the thing there, and everybody's hollering and screaming. So he walks over and he says, "Now you had something very special you wanted to do today, didn't you?" And this guy, he was an he was a sky high. He tries to take the microphone out of Al's hand, and Al's like, "Oh no, I'll hold this." This guy really thought Al was going to give up the microphone for him. And so, this guy moves the rail. It's interesting to watch eyes. Eyes will come into your house. I tell you, boy, eyes make my wife so mad doing this. They'll come into your house and they'll just start moving stuff and putting it where they want it. Like they'll sit down at your coffee table, at your kitchen table, and they'll just start moving stuff around because everything's about them, right? They are the most important person in the room, So this incredibly high guy gets down on his knees and proposes to his girlfriend, who was probably an SC. And you could tell this guy's expecting this big, man, look what I've done. You should appreciate this because this is the way I'd like it, I'd like for it to be public for the whole nation to be watching and da-da-da-da. And so, man, he's down. This is after he's tried to take the microphone, move the barrier back, and got on his knees. And he says, "Will you marry me?" She actually never said yes or no. Now, later, Al asked her specifically, "So are you going to marry him?" And she said a very reserved yes. Now, she may going to marry him, but something, she might not be. One time, a guy proposed to Christy at one of our Christmas banquets. And I'm sitting there watching this, and I pick up on what nobody else in the room picked up on. She never said yes or no. She's SC. So, and he had made this big flamboyant move, you know what I mean? So he thinks they're engaged. And he doesn't know they're engaged until months down the road when she says, "I never said I'd marry you." So you C's, S's and C's. S's don't want, if they're going to show it, they want it pretty private, you know what I mean? But C's aren't not sometimes even comfortable showing a lot of emotion privately. So if you want to get sincere emotions expressed from a C, don't do it publicly. Or from an S, don't do it publicly. Don't make it flamboyant. Don't make it non-personal. That just seems totally insincere to an S, and just makes the C feel very, very uncomfortable. Questions? Yes, sir. C's want the last word. I'll tell you, sometimes I'll be talking to a C and it's like, okay, and it's like, okay, and you're like, okay, now if you say anything else, this is not going to go good. Stop. But let me explain. You've explained. Yes.
I want to ask, when you said you're talking about the whole SC and stuff, and don't be very flamboyant. How would you go about, expressing emotion or expressing how you feel about that person, like in a card or something?
The good question. How would you go about expressing emotion to an SC? S's really like things in writing. S's like notes. It gives them a chance to express. And C's would like notes, but you got to word it very well. You better make sure you know what all your words mean. Really. Yeah, an S is like to give notes. Now here's a little flip that you get into with S's. Is because S's will convey something to you in writing that is very warm and personal, number one, you can overestimate what that means. Because you're thinking, boy, if I said that, this would mean I'm in love. That may not be at all what they're saying. They're being warm, they're being sincere, they're being personable, they're expressing a sense of loyalty or whatever, you know. But that may not mean what it would mean to you. Another thing that's can be very anticlimactic in dealing with S's is that they express this warmth in writing, and so you're expecting to have this big emotional meeting, and then when you meet them, it's kind of like, it's kind of very anticlimactic because you're expecting that what was on this paper is going to translate into, and I'm not saying that it can't, I'm just saying it probably ain't going to happen at the airport. You know what I'm saying? So make sure that, and you know, like I say, with S's, now here's an interesting thing though, with S's would prefer that you, if you have something negative to say, that you put it in writing. Don't do it. Don't do it. Do not get into a writing exchange with hardly anybody. You should never deal with negatives through writing. I mean, there's too much room for misunderstanding. I went through about 3 email exchanges with somebody just in the last couple of weeks. They sent me an email. Now here I'm preaching this thing about signals, about sending off signals. And I'm talking about learn to communicate with people about the way they feel comfortable and the way that really works for them. And, you know, so, I mean, I'm right in the middle of this series. This is stuff I talk about in sermons all the time anyhow. So this person sends me this email. And you know, now I've made it pretty public that, look, don't send me emails with negative stuff. You want to talk to me about something negative, talk to me. But I can realize he may not have caught that, you know. So I get this email, and the person tends to be an S. I think this person is probably an IS. So this person expresses all of these issues in an email. And see, remember, since S's tend to be a dumping ground sometimes, they don't realize how much they dump on you. And their feeling is, particularly if they're an IS, okay, I've said it, I feel better now. I got enough I, you know. And so I get this email, so I respond to this. I say, okay, now I'm going to respond to this email, but number one, you know, I want you to realize that you made a lot of judgments in here. You didn't ask me any questions. You made all these assumptions. And then number two, do not send me another email. If you want to talk to me about this, you can talk to me about this. Do not send me another email. I wrote it there twice. Don't send me another email about this. So what happens? I get another email that says, now I know you said not to send you another email, but I feel really comfortable doing this through email. So I write him, and then he made some more judgments and assumptions, so I write him back and say, listen, you know, it is an act of mercy that I'm writing you the second email. Don't abuse this. You know, are you not listening? You know, did you not get it? I just preached a series on this. I just ask you directly, don't communicate with me about this through email. And you know, I tried to address him his answers. I tried to help him understand. This is what you're communicating. These are the statements you made in here. You know, this is what you communicated. You didn't ask me one question. You don't know if your information is accurate. You don't know anything. You just made these judgments, and you put me in a really uncomfortable situation that if we were talking personally, it'd be real easy to solve. Don't send me another email. 2 days later, I get another email. And so, you know, I just said this, you know, I'm only doing this really as an act of kindness. I've got to help you because in the time that I've known you, I've seen these kind of conflicts happen in your life. Please take this as a gift. And I said, go back and ask the people in your life that you have conflict with if they believe that you listen to them. Go back and ask them if they believe that you really care about their feelings, because the way you have handled this says to me, you don't care really about solving this problem. You don't care about meaningful communication. You care about you being comfortable and expressing your point of view. And you know, and I just said, these are all the signals that you're sending. And finally, you know, actually this past weekend, the guy said, man, you know something, I really appreciate you being honest with me. Because, see, usually nobody's honest with people in situations. It just goes to a blow-up, and they're not honest. But my point there is this. S's, while they're really good at communicating positive things in writing, S's are horrible. S's and C's are horrible at dealing with negative things in writing. Because a judgment, assumption, and no way, no way to gauge the response of the person. Of course, D's aren't that good at it either because they're so short and to the point. Dun, 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 dun. You feel like you've been shot with a machine gun, So don't deal with negatives with anybody, really, through emails and through writing, but especially don't do it with S's. Man, S's and C's, you'll get drawn into a non-ending email barrage that will never stop until somebody gets so offended that they finally, just write the other person off and block their email address. Question? Exactly, yeah. And that's how, if you approach a person in a way that's uncomfortable for that pattern, then you are creating an environment where they're probably going to pass judgments. I mean, and they're going to feel like this is your real motive, And so, unless you want things to go negative with people, you got to think about how would they be comfortable with me communicating this. And if you don't know, ask them. That's just an incredibly simple thing. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to people and said, I've really got some things that I want to talk to you about, but I'm really not sure what's the best way for us to do this. And let them tell you, And it may not be the way that's comfortable for you, but if you're wanting to be effective, you just go, okay, if that'll work for this person, then I'll find a way to do this. Question. That is a pattern with DIs to set up schedules and this sort of thing. And here's the thing you want to realize. D's and I's tend to be unrealistic about their time schedules. And so a D would set up a schedule that had no flexibility in it, that didn't have enough fun time in it, that didn't have enough breaks in it, would be unrealistic about those kinds of things. And so one of the important things is just learning how to set schedules for yourself and learning to realize if I make this too rigid, eventually I'm going to have a breakdown. I'm not going to be able to take it. And I think every behavior style may do that to some degree. I mean, the S's and C's, I bet, struggle with that to some degree. Just trying to get it. Of course, S's don't like schedules. Because, and you know what S's don't like about schedules? Is that they don't like actually sitting down and making the decisions. Really. I's don't like schedules because it's just schedules are not going to be fun. They're afraid that will restrict being able to be impulsive. D's don't like schedules because they feel like that those schedules will restrict them and hem them in and give them a loss of control over their own life. And, C's like schedules because that gives them a way to control everybody else. So, see, the real truth is, no matter what it is, everybody struggles with the same things. They just do it for different reasons. Everybody struggles with schedules. We just struggle for different reasons. Everybody struggles with honesty. Everybody does. We just struggle with it for different reasons, and we all lie different ways. See, we all have the same problems. We just manage them differently so that to us, when a D tells a lie, he tells it. Well, actually, when a D tells a lie, he pretty much don't care. It's just I'm lying, prove I'm wrong, If a C tells a lie, they always lie on technicality. In other words, I will say this in a way that you can't prove. C's usually lie by half-truths. They will tell something that's true and omit something that's not true, and therefore they're not lying. S's tell lies for the benefit of other people. That we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. So this really isn't a lie. This is really just me protecting this other person. And I's tell lies because they want to be liked. So everybody struggles with lying. Everybody struggles with scheduling. So you just want to realize that it's not the particular problem that is so inherent to a particular behavior style. It's just the way they address that problem that's particular to that particular behavior style. Now, to go back to the question, so when a DI plans a schedule, be very realistic about it. Get somebody that is experienced to help you do your scheduling at first. Put enough breaks in it. Put enough personal time in it, so that it doesn't burn you out. And don't overschedule. Like, for instance, if you get to where you can, have one day a week that doesn't have a schedule. I tell you, a D will get all gung-ho and over the top and idealistic, and man, they're scheduling every minute for the next 6 months, and this is what time I'm going to get up on Saturday, and this is what, but they can't stay with it. After a while, it just burns them out. So make a realistic schedule, build enough fun time, enough play time in there, and be very realistic about your own tendencies. C's make certain kind of good lawyers. A C would not necessarily be a great lawyer that could argue like a trial lawyer. Now, you want to have some C because you want to have some detail. I had to go to court not long ago because we were evicting some people over here, and we got to court, and it turned out that if you're a corporation, you're required by law to have an attorney. And we went in this thing it was one of these deals we should have just been able to show up and just say, this is it, da-da-da-da-da. So I said, well, you know what? My name is on the note. I'll represent myself. And so the judge agreed to let me represent myself. And so their lawyer really, in the end, we won the case. We had to make a couple appearances. But really, I just buried this guy because I just shifted over into C mode. And this lawyer was more of an IS, and I just wrote down everything he said, every sentence he said. I just wrote down, part of that sentence, and I just shifted over into C mode and buried him. I just pointed out every contradiction in his statement, and I asked questions that made him lie. I knew he was an I, and so I had this. So I'd ask him a question, he would lie, and I'd say, "But you said." Then I'd ask him another question, and he would lie, and I'd say, "But you said." Now, so if you can bring the C to it, you can be good. But if you're just in the C mode, you would not make a good trial lawyer, because a trial lawyer has to think on their feet. They have to argue. They have to get people's emotions. I was getting sued one time for $1 million, and this lawyer that was representing the other people was a really high D, and so. I would always suck him into a trap by his ego. And when I was on the stand, I would let him take me down paths thinking that he had me. And when we would get so far down the path and his ego would swell to the point that he was sure that he had me, and I'd do it to him every time, I would actually start asking him questions. And he wouldn't realize when the shift would take place. And like they were trying to prove that I was mentally unstable because I said that God talked to me. And so we start down this thing, and man, they're like, so you hear voices, and and so I seed my way around that question. I wasn't going to say no, I don't, because they're going to get down to it. Well, you've said that you hear God speak to you, so do you hear voices or not? So you give a good C answer, you give a half answer. And so, you start down this thing, and you got this guy, man, and he is thinking that he's got me. And he's a D, and you just let his ego swell out. And so we get pretty far down there, and so I forgot what it was he asked me, something about God, and I said, so I came back with a question. He was so inflamed with his ego that he never realized that I just turned the tables. And so he answered my question, and then I just started asking him questions. And I would do this to him every time. And he would just go into this rage. But wait, and he'd start beating on the table. I'm asking the questions here. And I said, well, sure, whatever, So, you can learn how to make any of these things work for you. All right, we'll cut off the tape. We'll let you take your test. Let me give you your homework real quick. Let's see, this is class 4, right? All right, let's see here. Class 4, this is your assignment. Identify the top 10 conflicts you have with other behavior styles. Identify the top 10 conflicts you have with other behavior styles. Number 2, identify why you have them. Number 3, how do they threaten you? What is it about this other behavior style that threatens you? Number 4, what do they do that is intimidating? So you may say, a D threatens me because they make me feel inadequate. Okay, so this is how they threaten you. How do they intimidate you? Well, they look straight at me. They look me right in the eye when they talk to me, and they talk real direct. And, so you want to figure these things out. Number 5, what attitudes must you adopt to prevent this? And number 6, what could you do differently that would lessen the potential for conflict? What could you do differently that would lessen the potential for conflict? So you're going to give me the top 10 conflicts you have with other behavior styles, and then you're going to give me these next 5 things about each one of those situations or people. The last one is, what could you do differently that would lessen the potential for conflict? Yes. No, you can just pick any 10 you want. Any other questions? 2 things. Well, that is a very good question. How do you come to the place where you can anticipate what people are going to do? Of course, number 1 is getting good information and learning how to identify behavior styles. Now, remember, we're still not talking about why they do it. We're just talking about, you pretty much know this is what's coming next. But here's the real key. This is the real key. You have got to be so comfortable with yourself that you have nothing to protect, nothing to hide. You know what I mean? You just know yourself very well. Like, in other words, you get in these situations where somebody does something. Yeah, you get that feeling of intimidation, but you're able to say, that's just a feeling because of this. And you're able to just let it go and just move right past it. Because the moment you go to fear or any emotion that is stimulated by fear, then it skews your understanding of your environment. So getting really, really comfortable with yourself is essential to using this kind of information in real live interaction.